Dr. Hana Kim pressed her face against the cool metal of the observation window and watched the planet below slowly spin. The world called Kepler 442c looked peaceful from space. Its brown and orange surface showed no signs of life, but that was exactly why they were here. The ruins buried beneath that dead surface might hold secrets from millions of years ago. She turned away from the window and walked down the long corridor of the research ship Harmony's Edge. The ship was beautiful, in the way that alien technology often was. The walls curved smoothly without sharp corners, and soft blue light flowed through transparent tubes that ran along the ceiling. Everything felt organic, like walking inside some giant living creature. Hana had been working with alien crews for 5 years now, but she still felt like an outsider sometimes. Humans were new to the galaxy, or so everyone believed. They had only developed space travel recently compared to the other races. Most aliens treated humans with polite curiosity, the way adults might watch a clever child trying to solve a puzzle. The bridge doors opened silently as she approached. Captain Veltar stood at the center of the command area, his crystalline body catching and reflecting the light from the control panels. He was tall and thin, almost transparent, with veins of silver light running through his body. His people, the Ethereal Collective, were known for their calm wisdom and their ability to think in ways that other species could not. "Dr. Kim," the captain said without turning around. His voice had a musical quality, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We will reach the landing site in 2 hours. Are your teams prepared?" "Yes, Captain," Hana replied. She had learned to keep her answers short with Veltar. He valued efficiency above all else. "The scanning equipment is ready, and the excavation drones are checked and loaded." Veltar finally turned to face her. Where a human would have eyes, he had clusters of small, bright points of light that seemed to look directly into her soul. "Tell me again what you expect to find down there." Hana had given this briefing 3 times already, but she understood why the captain wanted to hear it again. The mission was expensive, and the Galactic Archaeological Council had taken a big risk funding human research. She moved to the main display screen and activated the planetary scans. "The satellite surveys show structures buried under about 50 meters of sand and rock," she said, pointing to the geometric shapes highlighted in green. "The materials are not natural. They show signs of advanced construction techniques. Based on the dating analysis, these ruins are approximately 4.7 million years old." The bridge crew grew quiet. Even by galactic standards, that was ancient. Most of the current spacefaring civilizations were only a few 100,000 years old at most. Veltar's lights dimmed slightly, which Hana had learned meant he was thinking deeply. "And you believe this civilization was destroyed by war?" "The evidence suggests it," Hana said. "The orbital bombardment patterns, the way the structures were buried so suddenly, the radiation signatures that still show up on deep scans. Something terrible happened here." "Wars are wasteful," commented Zefka from her station near the communications array. The insectoid officer had 4 arms and compound eyes that could see in multiple directions at once. Her people, the Buzz Collective, believed that conflict was inefficient and illogical. Why do species choose destruction over cooperation? Before Hana could answer, warning lights began flashing throughout the bridge. The ship's computer began speaking in the neutral voice that all species had agreed to use for emergencies. "Alert. Multiple unidentified ships detected approaching at high speed. Configuration suggests hostile intent. Estimated time to intercept, 4 minutes." Captain Veltar moved quickly to his command chair. His graceful movements became sharp and precise. "Minho, get me maximum power to shields and engines. Zefka, try to establish communication with the approaching ships." Minho Park, the human engineer, was already working at his station. His hands flew over the controls with the kind of speed that came from years of practice. He was the only other human on the ship, a quiet man who seemed to understand alien technology better than most aliens did. "Power levels at maximum," Minho reported. "But Captain, these ships are moving faster than they should be able to." "Whatever they're using for propulsion, it's not standard technology." On the main screen, the approaching ships became visible. They were ugly, brutal-looking things that seemed to be built from scrap metal and stolen parts. Dark red paint covered their hulls, and Hana could see weapon ports that looked like hungry mouths ready to devour anything in their path. "This is Captain Veltar of the research vessel Harmony's Edge," the captain said into the communication system. "We are on a peaceful scientific mission authorized by the Galactic Council. State your intentions." The reply came immediately, and the voice that answered made Hana's blood run cold. It was deep and harsh, filled with the kind of cruelty that enjoyed causing pain. "This is Warlord Gorthak of the Crimson Horde. Your ship and everything on it now belongs to us. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the death of your entire crew." Captain Veltar's lights flickered rapidly, which Hana knew meant anger. "We carry nothing of military value. We are researchers studying ancient history. Surely your time would be better spent elsewhere." Gorthak's laughter sounded like grinding metal. "Ancient history can be very valuable to the right buyers, and your ship's technology will fetch a good price. You have 30 seconds to comply." Veltar looked around the bridge at his crew. Hana saw the conflict in his crystalline features. The ethereal collective believed deeply in the value of all life. They would surrender rather than risk their crew in a hopeless fight. "Minho," the captain said quietly, "how long until we can jump to hyperspace?" "The engines need 3 more minutes to charge, Captain. And with those ships surrounding us, I don't think they'll give us the chance." The raider ships were close now, close enough that Hana could see their weapon systems powering up. Red light began to gather at the tips of their cannons, and she realized with growing horror that they were not planning to disable the Harmony's Edge. They were planning to cripple it so badly that the crew would have no choice but to surrender. "All hands, prepare for impact," Captain Veltar announced over the ship's communication system. "Damage control teams to emergency stations." The first blast hit the ship's starboard side. The artificial gravity flickered, and Hana had to grab onto a nearby console to keep from falling. Emergency lights came on and she could hear the sound of alarms throughout the ship. "Shields down to 60%, Minho called out. "Hull breach on deck 4. Emergency systems are sealing it." More blasts followed. The raiders were being careful, targeting systems that would disable the ship without destroying it completely. They wanted the Harmony's Edge intact, so they could salvage whatever was valuable. "Captain," Zefka said, her voice tight with fear, "I'm detecting boarding pods launching from the raider ships. They're planning to board us." Veltar stood up from his command chair. For a moment, Hana saw something in his crystalline form that she had never seen before. It was not anger or fear, but something older and deeper. It was the look of a being who had been pushed too far. "All crew members," he announced, "arm yourselves with whatever weapons you can find. We will not surrender our ship to pirates." But even as he spoke, another massive blast shook the Harmony's Edge. This time the lights went out completely, and in the darkness, Hana heard the terrible sound of metal tearing apart. The crash had been terrible. Hana Kim woke up with dust in her mouth and a sharp pain in her left shoulder. Around her, the broken remains of the Harmony's Edge groaned and settled deeper into the crater it had carved in the moon's surface. Emergency. Lighting cast red shadows on the twisted metal walls. She sat up slowly and looked around the damaged bridge. Captain Veltar lay motionless near his command chair, his crystalline body cracked and dark. The beautiful silver veins that had carried light through his form were now cold and lifeless. Hana closed her eyes for a moment and whispered a quiet goodbye to the captain who had treated her with more respect than many beings in the galaxy. "Hana, are you hurt?" Minho Park's voice came from somewhere behind the fallen debris. She could hear him moving, pushing aside broken panels and twisted metal. "I'm okay," she called back, though her shoulder disagreed. "What about the others?" "Dr. Liravan is alive but injured. Zefka lost one of her arms, but she says she can still work. Navigator Korthun has some broken ribs, but he's conscious." Hana forced herself to stand. The ship's gravity was failing, making everything feel light and strange. She made her way through the wreckage to where the other survivors were gathering, in what used to be the ship's central corridor. Dr. Liravan was a plant-like being whose green skin could usually heal. Minor injuries by itself. Now she looked pale and weak, with several of her leaf-like appendages torn and bleeding a clear, sap-like substance. Zefka sat next to her, holding her damaged arm close to her body. The insectoid's compound eyes were dim with pain, but she was already trying to work on a damaged communication device with her remaining 3 arms. Navigator Korthun was the largest of the survivors. His reptilian features were usually calm and dignified, but now scales around his eyes were cracked, and he moved carefully because of his injured ribs. "How bad is our situation?" Hana asked Minho as he finished checking everyone's injuries. Minho wiped grease from his hands on his torn uniform. "The ship is completely dead. Main power is gone, life support is failing, and the hull has multiple breaches. We have maybe 6 hours of breathable air left, and that's only if we stay in this section." "What about the raiders?" "They landed about 2 kilometers from here. I saw their ships through the observation port before I came down here. They're setting up some kind of base camp." Korthun lifted his large head. "They will come looking for survivors soon. Pirates do not leave witnesses." Hana felt a chill that had nothing to do with the failing life support. She had heard stories about the Crimson Horde. They were not just pirates who stole cargo and left. They were slavers and killers who enjoyed causing pain. "We need to get out of the ship," she said. "Find somewhere to hide until help arrives." "If help arrives," Zefka said quietly. Her translator made her voice sound sad and tired. "The emergency beacon was destroyed in the crash. No one knows where we are." Hana thought about this. The Harmony's Edge had been on a secret mission to study the ruins. The Galactic Council had not wanted other species to know about the ancient civilization until they understood more about what had happened to it. That secrecy might now get them all killed. "The ruins," she said suddenly. "We can hide in the ruins we came here to study. They're underground, and the raiders might not think to look there." Minho nodded. "It's better than staying here. I can grab some equipment before we go. Maybe I can build a new transmitter if I can find the right parts." They spent the next hour gathering everything they could carry. Minho found a portable power unit and some communication equipment that was still working. Dr. Liravan packed medical supplies, though her movements were slow and painful. Zefka managed to save some scanning devices, and Korthun carried food and water. Hana took the archaeological equipment she would need to open the sealed entrances to the ruins. She also grabbed Captain Veltar's personal log device. If they survived, someone should know how bravely he had tried to protect his crew. Leaving the ship was hard. It meant giving up any hope of being rescued by the ship's automatic systems. But staying meant certain death when the air ran out, or the raiders found them. The moon's surface was cold and airless. They moved slowly in their emergency suits, carrying their supplies and trying not to make too much noise. In the distance, Hana could see lights from the raider camp. Dark shapes moved between the lights, and she was glad they were too far away to see details. The entrance to the ruins was exactly where the orbital scans had said it would be. Ancient metal doors covered with millions of years of dust and debris were built into the side of a low hill. Hana connected her archaeological tools to the door's opening mechanism and held her breath. The doors opened with a deep rumbling, sound that she felt through her feet. Stale air rushed out, air that had been trapped for longer than most civilizations had existed. Her suit's sensors showed that the air was breathable, though it tasted old and strange when she finally removed her helmet. "Incredible," whispered Dr. Liravan as they entered the ruins. "Look at the walls." The corridors were huge, built for beings much larger than any of the current galactic species. Emergency lighting came on as they walked, activated by motion. Sensors that still worked after millions of years. The walls were covered with murals that showed scenes of space battles, ground combat, and what looked like entire planets being destroyed. But it was the beings in the murals that made Hana stop and stare. They looked almost human. Not exactly human, but close enough that she could see the similarities. They were tall and strong, with faces that showed intelligence and determination. In the battle scenes, they fought with weapons and tactics that seemed far more advanced than anything the current galaxy possessed. "These beings," Korthun said slowly, "they were warriors." "More than warriors," Hana replied, studying a mural that showed a fleet of ships destroying an entire star system. They were conquerors. Look at the size of their fleets, the way they organized their attacks. This wasn't just war. This was domination. They found a large chamber deep in the ruins where they could set up a temporary camp. The room had multiple exits, which would give them escape routes if the raiders found them. Ancient machinery hummed, quietly in the walls, still maintaining the air and temperature after all these millions of years. Minho immediately began working on building a new transmitter. If I can boost the signal using some of this ancient technology, maybe I can get a message out. The power systems here are incredible. I've never seen anything like them. While he worked, Hana continued to study the murals. The more she looked, the more disturbed she became. The warrior race depicted in the artwork had not just conquered other species. They had completely destroyed several civilizations, turning entire worlds into lifeless rocks. "Dr. Kim," Zefka called from across the chamber. "You should see this." Hana walked over to where the insectoid was examining a section of the wall. The mural here was different from the others. Instead of showing battles and destruction, it showed the warrior race gathered around what looked like a council or meeting. "Look at their faces," Zefka said, pointing with one of her remaining arms. "They're not celebrating victory. They look sad, regretful." Hana studied the faces more carefully. Zefka was right. The expressions on the warriors' faces showed sorrow, not triumph. And in the background of the mural, she could see ships leaving, heading toward the edge of the galaxy, I think, Hana said slowly. They chose to leave. After all the destruction they caused, they decided to abandon their empire and go somewhere far away. A loud rumbling sound from above interrupted her thoughts. Dust fell from the ceiling and the ancient lights flickered. "That's not good," Minho said, looking up from his work on the transmitter. "The raiders are using seismic charges. They're trying to collapse the entrances to trap us down here." Hana felt fear grip her heart. They had thought the ruins would be a safe hiding place. Instead, they might have just chosen their own tomb. But as she looked again at the murals showing the ancient warriors, she felt something else besides fear. She felt anger. These raiders had killed Captain Veltar and destroyed their ship. Now they were trying to bury the survivors alive. For the first time in her life, Dr. Hana Kim understood what it meant to want to fight back. Communications Officer Jiwon Lee was drinking her third cup of coffee when the emergency signal came through. She had been working the night shift at the orbital defense platform above New Seoul for 2 years, and most nights were quiet. Thupindi. Coffee helped her stay alert during the long hours of monitoring empty space. But this signal was different. It was coming through on an old emergency frequency that nobody used anymore, a frequency that was supposed to be classified. Jiwon sat up straight and put down her coffee. She ran the signal through the computer 3 times to make sure she was reading it correctly. Each time the result was the same. The signal contained identification codes that made her hands shake as she reached for the emergency communication button. "Commander Choi to the communication center immediately," she announced over the station's internal network. "Priority Alpha emergency." Commander Taehyun Choi arrived within 2 minutes, still pulling on his uniform jacket. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Most people in the Human Defense Force respected him, and those who knew him well also feared him a little. "What do we have, Lee?" he asked, moving to look over her shoulder at the display screen. "Emergency transmission from the Ancestor Sector, sir," Jiwon said, her voice tight with stress. "Dr. Hana Kim's identification codes. She's requesting immediate extraction for survivors of a pirate attack." Commander Choi went very still. The Ancestor Sector was forbidden territory. No human ships were supposed to go there without special permission from the highest levels of government. And Dr. Kim was not supposed to exist, at least not in any official records. "How many survivors?" he asked quietly. "The signal indicates 5 people total. 3 aliens and 2 humans. They're trapped in underground ruins and under active pursuit by raiders identified as the Crimson Horde." Commander Choi closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Jiwon saw something in his face that made her stomach clench with worry. It was the look of a man who had been dreading this day for years.
"Lee, encrypt this conversation and mark it code black." What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Dr. Hana Kim is not just an archaeologist. She's one of our deep cover operatives working with alien research teams. G1's
Mouth dropped open. Sir, are you saying we have spies in the alien scientific community? Not spies exactly. Observers. People who make sure that certain secrets stay buried. The ruins Dr. Kim is trapped in contain evidence of humanity's real history in the galaxy. Evidence that could change everything if the wrong people found it. Commander, Choi moved to the main communication panel and began entering commands that Jiwon had never seen before. Hidden systems came online, and she realized that the defense platform had capabilities she had never known about. Contact the Ready Fleet, Commander Choi ordered. Tell Captain Somin Kang that Operation Ancient Guardian is now active. She'll know what that means. 20 minutes later, Captain Somin Kang stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Eternal, Vigilance, and watched her crew prepare for emergency departure. Around her, 3 destroyers were also making ready for immediate hyperspace jump. The ships looked like standard human military vessels from the outside, but Somin knew the truth about what they really carried. Captain, her first officer reported, all ships report ready for jump. Engineering says we can maintain maximum speed for 6 hours without stopping. Somin nodded. 6 hours would get them to the Ancestor sector, but it would also reveal capabilities that humanity had kept hidden for decades. Their ships could travel faster than any alien vessel, and their weapon systems were generations ahead of anything the galaxy had seen. Communications send a message to Commander Choi. Tell him we understand the risks and we're going anyway. Some things are more important than keeping secrets. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Somin thought about Dr. Kim and the other survivors trapped in those ancient ruins. Hana Kim was more than just another operative. She was a friend, someone who had volunteered for the dangerous job of living among aliens and pretending to be something she was not. All ships, this is Captain Kang, Somin announced over the fleet communication channel. We're going into the Ancestor sector to extract 5 survivors from a hostile situation. The enemy force is estimated at 30 or more ships from the Crimson Horde. They will outnumber us significantly. She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. These were men and women who had trained for this moment their entire careers. They knew what it meant to reveal humanity's true capabilities to the galaxy. But numbers don't tell the whole story, Somin continued. Those raiders think they're fighting the descendants of a peaceful, recently spacefaring species. They have no idea who they're really dealing with. They're about to learn why our ancestors once ruled half the galaxy. The hyperspace jump felt different from normal travel. The engines pushed harder, the ship moved faster, and space seemed to bend around them in ways that would have impressed even the most advanced alien civilizations. Humanity had learned much from studying their ancestors' technology, and they had improved on it in ways that would have made those ancient warriors proud. During the journey, Somin reviewed everything they knew about the Crimson Horde. They were brutal pirates who showed no mercy to their victims. They captured slaves, destroyed entire colonies, and took pleasure in causing suffering. The galaxy's other civilizations feared them, but nobody had been able to stop them. That was about to change. Captain, the navigation officer announced, we're approaching the target system. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple raider ships in orbit around the moon where the survivors are located. Somin stood up from her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for combat with the calm efficiency of people who had trained for this their entire lives. Warning lights came on throughout the ship, and she could hear similar preparations being made on the other vessels. In the fleet, all ships prepare for combat operations, she announced. Remember, we're not just rescuing our people. We're sending a message to every pirate and raider in the galaxy. The age of humanity hiding in shadows is over. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, and immediately the raider ships began moving to intercept them. Somin counted 32 enemy vessels of various sizes, from small fighters to large cruisers. It should have been an impossible fight for 4 human ships. But as Captain Somin Kang gave the order to attack, she smiled. The raiders were about to discover that impossible was just another word for something that hadn't happened yet. On the moon below, Minho, Park's improvised transmitter, finally broke through the raiders' jamming signals and sent out a powerful message to the human fleet. This is Dr. Hana Kim to any human vessels in the area. We are alive and holding position in the ancient ruins. The raiders are trying to collapse our hiding place. We don't know how much longer we can survive down here. The reply came immediately, strong and clear. Dr. Kim, this is Captain Kang of the Eternal Vigilance. We have you on sensors. Stay in the ruins and keep your heads down. The cavalry has arrived. Warlord Gorthak had been a pirate for 30 years, and he had learned to recognize easy prey when he saw it. 4 small human ships against his fleet of 32 vessels should have been over in minutes. He almost felt sorry for the humans. Almost. This is your final warning, he broadcast to the human fleet. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist, and I will make sure you suffer for days before you die. The reply came from the largest human ship, a heavy cruiser that looked pitifully small compared to his flagship. The voice was female, calm, and completely unafraid. This is Captain Soman Kang of the Terran ship Eternal Vigilance. You have attacked and murdered innocent researchers. You have 30 seconds to release our people and withdraw from this system, or we will destroy every ship in your fleet. Gorthak laughed so hard that his massive body shook. Around him on the bridge, his crew joined in the laughter. The humans were either insane or incredibly stupid, maybe both. Did you hear that? He called to his fleet commanders. 4 little human ships think they can destroy us all. I think these humans need a lesson in reality. He gave the signal to attack, expecting to watch the human ships disappear in balls of fire within moments. Instead, what happened next would be talked about in hushed whispers throughout the galaxy for years to come. The human ships moved like nothing Gorthak had ever seen. They didn't just accelerate quickly, they seemed to bend space around themselves, appearing in positions that should have been impossible to reach so fast. The destroyers Iron Will and Crimson Dawn split apart and began moving through his fleet formation like hunting wolves, striking and vanishing before his gunners could target them. But it was the 3rd destroyer, Silent Thunder, that truly frightened him. One moment it was visible on his sensors, and the next it had simply vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. His weapons officers reported that they could no longer detect it at all. Impossible, Gorthak muttered. Ships don't just disappear. His answer came in the form of explosions throughout his fleet. One after another, his ships began dying. They would be flying normally one second, and the next they would erupt in flames as their reactors overloaded. There was no warning, no incoming weapons fire that his sensors could detect. His ships were simply being destroyed by an enemy he could not see. Find that ship, he roared at his crew. Use everything. Active sensors, thermal imaging, gravitational detection. It has to be there somewhere. But the Silent Thunder remained, invisible, and Gorthak's ships continued to die. His fleet was being hunted by a ghost. While his crew panicked about the invisible destroyer, the other human ships were systematically destroying everything in their path. The Iron Will and Crimson Dawn moved with perfect coordination, their weapon systems firing with accuracy that seemed impossible. Every shot hit exactly where it needed to, and every hit either destroyed or crippled its target. Gorthak watched in growing horror as his massive numerical advantage meant nothing. His ships were powerful by galactic standards, but they were slow and clumsy compared to the human vessels. His weapons couldn't track targets that moved so quickly, and his shields couldn't stop weapons that seemed to cut through them like they weren't even there. But it was the eternal vigilance that truly showed him what terror meant. Captain Kang's ship charged straight through the center of his fleet formation, taking fire from dozens of weapons at once. The concentrated firepower should have vaporized the human cruiser instantly. Instead, the Eternal Vigilance's shields absorbed every shot without even flickering. The ship moved through the storm of enemy fire like it was nothing more than gentle rain, while its own weapons reached out and touched his ships with beams of energy that turned metal into vapor. "Sir," one of his officers called out in a voice tight with fear. "We're reading massive energy signatures from the human weapons, power levels that shouldn't be possible for ships that size." Gorthak stared at his tactical display and watched red dots disappear one by one. Each red dot was one of his ships. Each disappearing dot was hundreds of his people dying. In less than 10 minutes, he had lost over half his fleet. "All ships retreat," he finally ordered. "Jump to hyperspace immediately." But retreat was not an option. Every time one of his ships tried to power up its hyperspace drive, the silent thunder would appear out of nowhere and destroy the engine section with surgical precision. The invisible human ship was not just hunting them, it was trapping them. Meanwhile, the other human ships continued their methodical destruction of his fleet. They moved like dancers, like artists, like beings who had been born to fight in the depths of space. Every move was perfect. Every shot was exactly placed. Every maneuver was timed to perfection. Gorthak realized with growing despair that this was not a battle. This was an execution. He had attacked what he thought were helpless researchers, and instead he had awakened something terrible. "Sir," his communications officer said, his voice shaking, "I'm picking up transmissions from the other pirate fleets in nearby systems. They're all reporting the same thing. Human ships appearing out of nowhere and destroying entire raider groups." For the first time in 30 years of piracy, Gorthak felt true fear. "How many human ships?" "Dozens, sir. Maybe hundreds. They're hitting every Crimson Horde base and outpost simultaneously. It's like they knew exactly where all our forces were located." Gorthak looked at his tactical display again. Only 8 of his ships were still functional, and they were surrounded by the 4 human vessels. The silent thunder had become visible again, hovering just outside weapons range like a predator deciding which prey to take next. A new voice came over the communication channel, still calm but carrying an undertone of absolute authority. "This is Captain Kang. Warlord Gorthak, you are defeated. Order your remaining ships to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded." Gorthak's pride warred with his survival instinct. He had never surrendered in 30 years of raiding, but he had also never faced an enemy like this. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are humans, really?" "We are the children of warriors," Captain Kang replied. "Our ancestors once ruled the galaxy through strength and skill. We chose to put those days behind us and live in peace among the other species. But when innocent people are threatened, when our own people cry out for help, we remember who we are." Gorthak looked around his bridge at the faces of his surviving crew. They were looking at him with expressions he had never seen before. Not anger or bloodlust, but simple, absolute terror. "We surrender," he said quietly. "Smart choice, Captain," Kang replied. "But understand this, Gorthak. Your raiding days are over. The Crimson Horde is finished. We've spent the last hour destroying every base, every outpost, and every ship you ever commanded. You're the last ones left." As human boarding parties began moving toward his ship, Gorthak realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. For years, the major alien civilizations had wondered why pirates and raiders seemed to avoid human space, why the areas around human colonies were always mysteriously safe from attack. Now he understood. It wasn't because humans were weak or unimportant. It was because something was watching from the shadows, something that had been waiting for an excuse to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. On the moon below, Dr. Hana Kim heard the sounds of the battle through the ancient stone walls of the ruins. The seismic charges had stopped, and she could hear the distinctive whine of human shuttle engines landing on the surface. "Rescue is here," she said to the other survivors. "We're going home." But as she looked at the murals depicting humanity's warrior ancestors, she knew that going home would never be the same. The secret was out. The galaxy now knew that humans were not the peaceful newcomers they had pretended to be. The age of hiding was over. The age of truth was about to begin. Dr. Hana Kim stood in the medical bay of the Eternal Vigilance and watched the stars through the observation window. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and she was finally strong enough to walk around the ship. Her shoulder was healing well, thanks to the advanced human medical technology, but her mind was still trying to process everything that had happened. The door to the medical bay opened, and Captain Soman Kang entered. Hana had known Soman for years, but she had always believed her friend was simply a merchant captain who transported goods between human colonies. Now she knew the truth was far more complicated. "How are you feeling?" Soman asked, taking a seat next to Hana's bed. "Better physically," Hana replied. But confused about everything else. Soman, what you did back there, the way your ships fought, the technology you used, none of that should be possible. Human military ships aren't that advanced, are they? Soman was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the stars. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of secrets that had been kept for generations. Hana, what do you know about human history before we developed spaceflight? The same thing everyone knows. We evolved on Earth, developed technology, slowly over thousands of years, and finally reached the stars about 100 years ago. We're one of the youngest spacefaring species in the galaxy. That's what we've told everyone, including most of our own people, Soman said. But it's not the truth. The truth is much more complicated and much more dangerous. She activated a small holographic display device and showed Hana an image that made her gasp. It was one of the murals from the ruins, but this version was complete and in full color. The warrior beings depicted looked even more human than she had realized. Those murals you found, Soman continued, they tell the story of humanity's real past. We didn't develop spaceflight recently. Our ancestors ruled a significant portion of the galaxy millions of years ago. Hana stared at the image. That's impossible. If humans were spacefaring millions of years ago, what happened to them? Where did they go? They made a choice, Soman said, changing the holographic display to show star maps with marked routes leading toward the edge of the galaxy. After centuries of conquest and war, they grew tired of ruling through force. They chose to withdraw from galactic civilization and start over on distant worlds like Earth. But why keep it secret? Why pretend to be a young species? Because the galaxy is not ready for the truth. Think about what you saw in those ruins, Hana. Think about the level of destruction our ancestors were capable of. If the other species knew what humans really were, they would either worship us or try to destroy us. Neither option leads to the peaceful coexistence we want. Hana thought about this, remembering the murals that showed entire star systems being destroyed. So humans in space today, people like me working with alien crews, we're all part of this deception? Not all, Soman said. Most humans living on colony worlds have no idea about our real history. But anyone who works closely with aliens, anyone who might discover evidence of our past, gets recruited into the program. We call ourselves the Watchers. We make sure certain secrets stay buried while we try to build a better future. The program, Hana repeated slowly. How long have you been watching me, Soman? Since you graduated from the Archaeological Institute. Your professors recommended you because you showed both exceptional skill and the right moral character. We needed someone we could trust working on projects that might uncover evidence of ancient human civilizations. Hana felt a mix of anger and understanding. Her entire career had been guided by people who were protecting secrets she didn't even know existed. But at the same time, she realized why it had been necessary. The technology on your ships, she said. It's based on what our ancestors left behind, isn't it? Partly. We've been studying the ruins and artifacts they left behind for decades, but we've also improved on their designs in ways they never imagined. Our ancestors were warriors first, and scientists second. We've had the luxury of focusing on advancement instead of conquest. The holographic display changed again, showing technical diagrams of human ships and weapons. The designs were elegant and efficient, clearly more advanced than anything the current galaxy had seen. Which brings us to our current problem, Soman said. The battle with the Crimson Horde was broadcast on automated distress signals throughout the galaxy. By now, every major alien government knows that human military capabilities are far beyond what we've claimed. Hana felt a chill of worry. What will they do? That depends on how we handle the next few days. Some species will panic and demand explanations. Others will try to figure out how they can benefit from human technology. A few might even consider preemptive strikes against human space. And what will we do? Soman stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Hana could see the other ships. In their fleet, along with dozens more human vessels that had appeared from hidden bases throughout the galaxy. We're going to tell the truth, Somin said. Or at least part of it. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session to discuss the human situation. We've been invited to attend and explain ourselves. Will you tell them everything? Not everything, but enough. We'll tell them that human military technology is more advanced than we previously admitted. We'll explain that we've been keeping our capabilities secret to avoid destabilizing the galactic balance of power. And we'll promise that we have no interest in conquest or domination. Hana considered this. Will they believe us? Some will. Others won't. But we have advantages that our ancestors didn't. We've spent a century building relationships with other species, proving that we can be trusted partners instead of conquerors. That should count for something. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the medical bay. Minho Park entered, carrying a datapad and looking excited despite everything they had been through. Hana, you need to see this, he said, showing her the datapad. I've been analyzing the ancient technology from the ruins, trying to understand how it works. The power systems, the defensive capabilities, the communication networks, they're all connected. Connected how? Hana asked. There's a galaxy-wide network built into the ruins and installations our ancestors left behind. Most of it has been dormant for millions of years, but when I boosted our transmitter using the ancient power systems, I accidentally activated part of the network. Soman moved closer, suddenly very interested. What kind of network? From what I can tell, it's a combination of communication system, defensive network, and monitoring station. Our ancestors built it as a way to watch over the galaxy even after they withdrew from active rule. Hana felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. The network is how you knew where all the Crimson Horde bases were, isn't it? How you were able to coordinate simultaneous attacks across multiple star systems? Soman nodded. The network has been providing us with information for decades, though we never fully understood how it worked. Most of the installations are hidden or disguised as natural formations. The aliens never realized they were surrounded by ancient human technology. But now that it's becoming active again, Minho said, other species are going to start noticing it. Energy signatures that don't match known technology, communication signals on frequencies that shouldn't exist, defensive systems that activate when threatened. Hana understood the implications immediately. The secret won't just be about human, military capabilities. It'll be about the fact that humanity never really left the galaxy at all. We've been here all along, watching and waiting. Which is why, Soman said, we need to control how this information comes out. The Galactic Council meeting will determine whether the next phase of human-alien relations is built on trust and cooperation, or fear and conflict. Hana looked at the datapad showing the ancient network's activation patterns. Across the galaxy, installations that had been dormant for millions of years were coming back to life. The Age of Secrets was ending whether humanity wanted it to or not. When do we reach the council chambers, she asked. 2 more days, Soman replied. Enough time for you to recover fully, and enough time for us to prepare what might be the most important speech in galactic history. As Hana settled back into her medical bed, she wondered what her life would be like after the truth came out. She had spent years living as a simple archaeologist among aliens who saw humans as younger siblings in the galactic community. Soon, they would know that humans were actually the elder species, the descendants of the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever seen. The question was whether that knowledge would bring peace or war. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest enclosed space Dr. Hana Kim had ever seen. Representatives from over 200 species sat in curved rows that rose toward a magnificent dome ceiling. The air hummed with dozens of different translation systems, working to convert alien languages into something each species could understand. Hana sat in the human delegation section next to Captain So-Min Kang and Commander Tae-Hyun Choi. Around them, she could feel the weight of thousands of alien eyes studying their every movement. The mood in the chamber was tense, fearful, and angry all at the same time. High Speaker Velnara, an ancient being from the Silicon Commonwealth, called the emergency session to order. Her crystalline voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. We are gathered here because recent events have revealed that one of our member species has not been truthful about their capabilities and intentions. the human delegation, will now explain why they have deceived the galactic community for over a century. Captain Kang stood up slowly and walked to the center of the chamber floor. All around her, alien representatives leaned forward to hear what she had to say. Some looked curious, others angry, and a few appeared genuinely frightened. Honored representatives, Soman began, her voice calm and steady. I am Captain Soman Kang of the Terran Defense Force. I am here to tell you a story that we have kept secret for far too long. She activated a holographic projector that filled the air above the chamber floor with images of ancient ruins and star maps. Humanity did not develop spaceflight 100 years ago. Our species has been traveling between the stars for millions of years. The beings your archaeologists have found evidence of, the ancient warrior civilization that once ruled much of the galaxy, those were our ancestors. A wave of shocked murmurs ran through the chamber. Several alien representatives stood up and began speaking at once, but High Speaker Velnara called for order. Continue, she said to Captain Kang. Our ancestors were indeed powerful warriors and conquerors, but after centuries of ruling through force, they made a choice that no other galactic civilization had ever made. They chose to give up their empire and withdraw to distant worlds at the edge of the galaxy. The holographic display changed to show images from the ruins where Hana had been rescued. The murals depicting the ancient warriors were clearly visible, along with the scenes showing their departure from galactic civilization. Why? Asked Representative Zorkon of the Verdant Alliance. Why would any species give up such power? Captain Kang looked directly at him. Because power without wisdom leads to destruction. Our ancestors had become so focused on conquest that they had forgotten how to build, how to create, how to help other species grow and flourish. They realized that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from protecting them. So you retreated to primitive worlds and started over, said Representative Lyrathes of the Ethereal Collective. But you kept your technology. Some of it, yes, but more importantly, we kept the knowledge of what unchecked power could do. For millions of years we have lived quietly on worlds like Earth, rebuilding our civilization with wisdom instead of conquest as our guide. The holographic display now showed images of human colonies, research stations, and the careful integration of humans into galactic society. When we finally returned to space, Soman continued, we chose to do so slowly and carefully. We wanted to learn about the galaxy you had built in our absence. We wanted to understand if we could find a place in it without repeating the mistakes of our past. By lying to us, interrupted Representative Gorthak of the Crimson Systems. By pretending to be weak while secretly maintaining weapons that can destroy entire fleets. Hana stood up before Captain Kang could respond. May I address the chamber, High Speaker? Velnara nodded, and Hana walked to join Soman in the center of the floor. My name is Dr. Hana Kim. I was one of the survivors rescued from the Crimson Horde attack. Until a few days ago, I believed the same things about human history that you all did. I worked as an archaeologist among your people, studying ancient civilizations and learning about the galaxy's past. She gestured to the holographic images still floating above them. I discovered the truth about humanity's origins not from secret briefings or classified documents, but from ancient murals and ruins that should have been lifeless for millions of years. And what I learned changed everything I thought I knew about my own species. The chamber was completely quiet now. Even the translation system seemed to have stopped humming. The ancient human civilization was not evil, Hana continued, but it was focused entirely on strength and conquest. When our ancestors realized that this path led only to destruction, they made the hardest choice any civilization can make. They chose to start over. She activated her own holographic projector showing images she had recorded in the ruins. These murals don't just show conquest and war. They show the moment when humanity's ancestors decided to leave. Look at their faces. You can see regret, sadness, and hope. Hope that someday their descendants might find a better way. Representative Kethmarn of the Deep Space Collective spoke up. But you maintained secret military forces. You kept advanced technology hidden. How do we know you won't use it to conquer us as your ancestors did? Before Hana could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices announced an incoming priority transmission from the Outer Rim territories. High Speaker Velnara authorized the transmission, and a desperate voice filled the chamber. "This is Colony Administrator Theclon of Mining Station Omega-7. We are under attack by unknown forces. They appeared out of nowhere and are destroying everything. Our defenses are useless against them. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help immediately." The transmission was cut off by the sound of explosions and screaming. Representative Velnara looked around the chamber at the shocked faces of the alien delegates. "Does anyone have ships in that sector that could respond to this emergency?" The silence stretched for long seconds. Mining Station Omega-7 was far from the main shipping routes, in a dangerous area where pirates and raiders operated freely. No alien government wanted to risk their ships in such a remote location. Captain Kang stepped forward. "High Speaker, the Human Defense Force has vessels that can reach the station within 2 hours. We request permission to respond to the emergency. You would risk your ships to save a station that belongs to none of your colonies?" asked Representative Zorkon. "Yes," Hana said simply. "Because that's what we do now. That's what we chose to become instead of conquerors." High Speaker Velnara looked around the chamber. No other species was offering to help. Finally, she nodded to Captain Kang. "Permission granted. Go save those people." What happened next would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy truly understood what humanity had become. Within minutes, reports began coming in from across the Outer Rim. Human ships were appearing at every location where colonies and stations were under attack. Ships that moved faster than anything in the known galaxy, with weapons that could stop any threat. But they didn't conquer the places they saved. They didn't demand payment or territory or submission. They simply eliminated the threats, made sure the survivors were safe, and then withdrew to patrol the darkness between the stars. Dr. Hana Kim stood before the Galactic Council and delivered humanity's promise to the galaxy. "We are no longer the conquerors our ancestors were. We are the guardians they chose to become. We have spent millions of years learning wisdom to match our strength. Now we offer both to the galaxy, not as rulers, but as protectors." She gestured to the images still floating above the chamber floor. "The ancient network our ancestors built is awakening across the galaxy, not as a weapon of conquest, but as a shield to protect all civilizations from those who would destroy them. We will not hide anymore, but we will also never again rule through fear." High Speaker Velnara stood up slowly. Around the chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds waited to hear what would happen next. "The Human Defense Force will be granted special status as Galactic Guardians," she announced. "They will have the authority to respond to emergencies and threats wherever they occur. In return, they will submit to oversight from this council, and will never use their power for conquest or territorial expansion." The vote was not unanimous, but it passed by a significant majority. As the session ended and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Hana found herself surrounded by aliens who wanted to thank her for her courage in telling the truth. But it was Representative Lyrathes of the Ethereal Collective who said what many were thinking. "Your ancestors were feared throughout the galaxy. But you, Dr. Kim, and people like you might be the reason the galaxy survives to see tomorrow." Later, standing on the observation deck of the Eternal Vigilance as it patrolled the Outer Rim, Hana looked out at the stars and thought about everything that had changed. Human ships now moved openly through space, no longer pretending to be limited by inferior technology. The ancient network hummed with activity as monitoring stations and defensive systems came online throughout the galaxy. But most importantly, humanity had finally found its place in the galactic community. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as the Guardians